What were tabernacles like 3,426 years ago, and how did they really work? For centuries, we have imagined the Israelites carrying simple tents through the desert, something like camping equipment blessed by God. But what if that image is completely wrong? What materials were these structures really made from? How did 3 million people organize sacred worship in a moving sanctuary with no permanent foundation, no stone walls, and almost no precedent in human history? What did it smell like, sound like, feel like to approach the dwelling place of the invisible God in the middle of nowhere? And how could the difference between outer appearance and inner reality teach us something we have missed for millennia about the nature of divine presence? When you truly step inside the world of the tabernacle, you discover that sacred space in the time of Moses worked in such a different and precise way that even the smallest details of Exodus begin to carry completely new meaning. Stay until the end, because what you will discover goes beyond historical curiosity. It is a strengthening of our faith today. The first impact when approaching the tabernacle did not come from gold or precious stones, but from goat hair. 11 massive panels of black woven goat hair stretched across the entire structure, each measuring 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. To the touch, this fabric was rough, dense, surprisingly heavy. The smell was unmistakable, the sharp animal scent of thousands of goats whose hair had been sheared, cleaned, spun, and woven by women working month after month in desert heat. This was not decorative fabric. It was survival technology. Goat hair possessed a property that made it irreplaceable in desert conditions. When dry, the fibers remained slightly separated, allowing air to circulate and heat to escape. But when rain fell, those same fibers swelled and tightened, creating a nearly waterproof barrier. A single panel could last for decades without. Rotting could withstand sandstorms that shredded lighter materials and could be folded, transported, and reassembled hundreds of times without falling apart. To the modern eye, this black covering would seem unworthy of the dwelling place of God, something we might associate with poverty or makeshift shelters. But this exterior concealed a truth that changed everything. Beneath that weathered dark surface lay colors and craftsmanship that belonged in a palace, not a desert. Directly beneath the black goat hair lay something no outsider ever saw. 10 curtains of fine twisted linen, dyed in blue, purple, and scarlet, with cherubim woven into the fabric itself. These were not painted images, but intricate designs created thread by thread, requiring skill that took years to develop. The blue came from a specific Mediterranean mollusk, crushed and processed through methods known only to expert dyers. The purple required even rarer sources, making it more valuable than gold by weight. The scarlet came from insects harvested at precise times of year. Creating these colors in the desert, far from normal supply chains, transformed simple weaving into an act of extraordinary devotion. Each curtain measured 28 cubits, all by 4 cubits, joined together with loops of blue cord and golden clasps. When assembled, they formed a continuous canopy visible only from inside, a ceiling of glory hidden from the world. The theological reversal was complete. Humble outside, radiant inside. This beauty existed for God and the serving priests alone, not for public display or human approval. But even these magnificent curtains required support. 48 frames of acacia wood overlaid with pure gold formed the skeleton of the structure. Each frame stood 10 cubits high and 1.5 cubits wide, weighing approximately 90 to 100 pounds. These were not crude poles, but precisely engineered beams with tenons at the base that fit into silver sockets. Each socket, weighing a full talent, 5 bars ran horizontally through golden rings attached to each frame, holding the entire structure rigid against desert winds. The engineering was extraordinary. The tabernacle measured 30 cubits long, 10 cubits wide, and 10 cubits high, Inside, a massive veil 4 inches thick divided the space into 2 chambers. The holy place measured 20 cubits. Beyond the veil, the most holy place formed a perfect cube, 10 cubits in every dimension. This was portable architecture that felt permanent, temporary construction that radiated eternal significance. But understanding the structure is only the beginning. To grasp how it actually worked, we must watch it being assembled and disassembled, a task that happened more times than anyone counted. When the cloud lifted, everything changed. That pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, was the only signal needed. No trumpets announced it. No human authority commanded it. The cloud moved, and 3 million people began the precise work of dismantling God's dwelling place. The process followed strict order. The most holy place was covered first. Priests wrapped the Ark of the Covenant in the veil itself, then layers of protective coverings. The Kohathite Levites carried these sacred objects, but could never touch them directly. Death came instantly to anyone who violated this boundary. The golden lampstand, the table of bread, the incense altar, each received specific coverings in exact sequence as commanded in Numbers chapter 4. The Gershonites dismantled the curtains, folding the fine linen with care to prevent tearing. The goat hair panels came down next, heavy and awkward in desert wind. The Merarites removed the frames, pulling tenons from silver bases, sliding bars through golden rings, stacking everything for transport. Thousands of people, specific families, precise assignments, no written checklist beyond the initial divine instructions given years before. The entire process likely required 1 to 2 days, working through heat and sand and constant wind. Then came reassembly at the new location. Silver bases positioned first, frames lifted and locked into place, bars threaded through rings, curtains spread and fastened with golden clasps, goat hair panels stretched over everything. And immediately, daily operations resumed. Every morning and evening, sacrifices. The bronze altar measured 5 cubits square, positioned in the courtyard where smoke rose constantly. Animals were slaughtered, blood drained and sprinkled, flesh burned until the smell of roasting meat filled the camp. Priests washed at the bronze laver between altar and tent entrance. Inside the holy place, the golden lampstand burned pure olive oil, trimmed each day. 12 loaves of bread sat on the golden table, replaced weekly. Twice daily, incense burned on the small golden altar, fragrance mixing with smoke from outside. This was not symbol alone. It was sweat, blood, smoke, and sacred. Precision combined. But even this careful order could not erase a harder truth. Not everyone experienced the tabernacle equally. Women watched from a distance, hands that had woven the very curtains now forbidden to enter. They had spun the goat hair through endless desert afternoons, their fingers calloused from the coarse fibers. They had prepared the fine linen, mixing dyes that stained their skin for weeks. They had embroidered cherubim into fabric destined for spaces they would never see. Their labor had built the tabernacle, yet the veil that separated the holy place from the most holy barred them just as completely as it barred ordinary men. They could smell the incense drifting through camp, hear the morning and evening sacrifices, see smoke rising above the goat hair covering. But the golden lampstand they had helped fund through jewelry donations, the table their hands had polished, the altar their sons would serve, these remained perpetually out of reach, existing in a sacred geography measured not in cubits, but in gender and genealogy. The Levites themselves lived with gradations of access that determined everything. Kohathites carried the most holy objects, but died if they glimpsed them uncovered. Gershonites handled the precious curtains, but never passed beyond them. Merarites transported the frames that supported divine presence, yet never experienced what those frames enclosed. Even among priests, only Aaron and his sons entered the holy place, and only the high priest, once yearly, on the Day of Atonement, could penetrate the final veil into that perfect cube where the ark rested between golden cherubim. This architecture of exclusion was not accidental, but designed, each boundary teaching that proximity to holiness required specific calling, specific bloodline, specific ritual purity. The tabernacle's beauty remained deliberately hidden because access to God was never assumed, never casual, never equal. 3 million people camped around a tent most would never enter, serving a presence they could approach only through representatives, through blood, through smoke, through distance that the thickness of fabric made unbridgeable. Yet this was always temporary. Every restriction, every veil, every boundary existed as preparation for something the tabernacle itself could only foreshadow. The rough goat hair exterior, concealing radiant beauty within, pointed toward incarnation, divine glory wrapped in ordinary flesh. The veil separating humanity from the most holy place anticipated its own destruction, torn from top to bottom at the moment of ultimate sacrifice. That portable structure with no permanent foundation declared that God's presence would not remain confined to one location, one people, one exclusive priesthood. The blood sprinkled daily on bronze and gold prefigured blood sufficient to end all barriers forever. When the cloud finally led Israel across Jordan into the Promised Land, the tabernacle's portable, nature revealed its deepest truth. Sacred space was never meant to stay static. The journey was always toward a temple, then beyond temple to Emmanuel, God with us, presence without walls or veils or restricted access. 3 million people circling a tent they mostly could not enter. We're learning to long for the day when presence would pour out universally, when the Spirit would dwell not in structures of acacia and gold, but in living stones, when every believer would become the sanctuary, when the distance carefully maintained by fabric and frame and genealogy would collapse into the impossible intimacy of Christ himself, dwelling within. The implications reach into our present moment with uncomfortable precision. We have inherited a faith where the veil is torn, where access stands open, where the most holy place invites rather than excludes. Yet how casually we approach what cost everything to obtain. The Israelites understood something we have forgotten, that the presence of God carries weight, demands reverence, transforms those who encounter it. They spent days dismantling and reassembling a structure whose every measurement mattered, whose every fabric carried meaning, whose every restriction taught them that holiness cannot be domesticated or made convenient. We enter prayer as one might enter a coffee shop, expecting comfort and familiarity. We speak of God's presence as if it were a spiritual amenity, available on demand, shaped to our preferences. The tabernacle operated differently. Incense burned at appointed times, not when people felt like praying. Sacrifices followed divine specification, not human creativity. The cloud moved when it chose, and 3 million people adjusted their lives accordingly, whether convenient or not. Presence determined schedule, not the reverse. Holiness set the terms. Humanity responded in careful obedience or faced death. This seems harsh until we recognize what it protected. The boundaries existed not to keep God distant, but to prevent people from treating sacred encounter as ordinary, from reducing the infinite to the manageable, from assuming that proximity requires no preparation. Every layer of covering, every restricted space, every prescribed ritual insisted that meeting the creator of the universe demanded something from the creature: attention, purity, submission, awe. The torn veil changes access, not the character of the one we access. Christ's sacrifice removes barriers, but does not diminish holiness. We can now enter boldly, but boldness is not carelessness. The same God who dwelt between golden cherubim in that perfect cube, whose presence required blood and smoke and careful boundaries, now invites us into intimacy that the high priest himself could barely imagine.